if you're not this, if you don't want to be on camera, just off. We are hoping to post this to YouTube after the fact so that people can come back and rewatch the conversation. We had over 100 people register for this event, so hoping that it stays in the conversation throughout the month of May and beyond. Hoping we are intending this to be a collaborative and supportive conversation. So anything that goes against that will either politely decline or not invite you back next time. So, and we cannot answer any specific questions about any kind of trials or therapies. So we'll do what we can, but we can't do anything specifically. So as far as introductions go, I'm Sunny, I'm 35, I live in Hico, Texas, and I was diagnosed January 20th of 2015. So I'm in year 7 and rocking and rolling. I'm part of an amazing group of women called Her ALS Story, and we're a group of women that were all diagnosed under the age of 35. And so our passion, our mission is really to give ALS a different face, kind of give a different ways of thinking about it, ways that we approach it, how we stay together, how we get through the hard days, and just awareness. So that opens the door to the Fight ALS Film Festival, which is going to take place every week throughout the month of May. So May, if you didn't know, is the ALS Awareness Month in the US. And so this is a great way to engage our communities in the conversation and empower that conversation to go beyond us and to continue to raise awareness and find a cure for this disease. Carol's going to talk to about the movie and the Haywood family, which lots of you are here. Just I'm starstruck. Drooling all over myself over here. And if you don't know Carol, be in love soon. There's not much that I can say about her that hadn't already been said, good or bad. And we love her, and tonight's gonna be great. So if you have any questions that come up, just throw them in the chat and we'll kind of try to work them in organically. We'll come to a point where we'll do kind of a Q&A, but since we have so many people, it might be just easier to put your questions or comments in the chat, and then I'll keep Carol somewhat on track. I don't know that task me with that.
Emily will help you with that too, Sunny, I bet.
Perfect.
She's awesome at it. Especially as thanks everybody for putting your information into the chat. It's really cool to see that popping up, but it will make it Sunny so that you, and maybe with the help of Emily and anybody else who's willing to help, weeding through some of that for some of the questions as we go on. So hi everybody, I'm Carol Hamilton. I am the one frantically waving my arm. I am the Vice President of Development at ALS TDI, the ALS Therapy Development Institute. And Sunny and I were surrounded by beer one day, and she told me about this great idea she had to do this film fest. And I said, hey, we can make this bigger. We can make this have an effect on the speed of research. How about we call some friends? And from there, Mary Kay Turner and Brainstorm jumped in and sponsored this event. And I'd like to thank them and our partners from Hark ALS and a bunch of other ALS organizations, certainly Her ALS Story, for helping this get off the ground so robustly. So welcome. Sunny asked if I would tell a little bit of my story and why I raised my hand to say, sure, I'd be happy to facilitate and moderate this particular conversation. But since I have raised my hand to do that, there is a tremendous amount of help on this Zoom. And if I get a word in edgewise with Jamie Haywood on here, I'm going to be unlucky. But I had been in the fashion industry. How do you like that? And then was a stay-at-home mom, and a friend's younger brother was diagnosed with ALS, a guy that I knew and had vacationed with over the years. And my dear friend said, okay, Carol, you've been at home long enough raising money for nursery schools and libraries. ALS needs your help. And he dropped off a copy of the book, His Brother's Keeper, which if you have not read that yet, I highly recommend it. And I think it probably had the same effect on Stephen Asher and Jeannie Jordan as it did on me. And from there, they also dropped off the DVD. That's aging me, right? It was a DVD back then of So Much So Fast. And it was a rainy Sunday morning, and I sat in bed and I finished the book and finished the movie. And I fell in love with the Haywood story and family, and I agreed to meet Jamie a couple of days later. And from there on in, that was 17 years ago, I have worn every hat except that of scientists at ALS TDI that I think there is, and I'm willing to wear whatever hat is required of me to help speed treatments to patients. So that is my background. And with that, you were also generous enough, Sunny, to allow me to do, a little bit of a plug in here. If anybody knows anyone who is a cyclist, we are coming up on our biggest event of the year at the end of June called the Tri-State Trek. Up to a 3-day bike ride. You can ride a couple of miles, you can ride 270, whatever you want, but it helps speed the research at ALS TDI. I think one of the other big questions that Sunny had, and probably a lot of people on here have, is how is ALS TDI different from the ALS TDF that you saw in the movies? So earlier, it was the ALS Therapy Development Foundation. We are now the ALS Therapy Development Institute. One of the main differences in those two words is that foundation assumes they're going to give money out, and institute assumes that we are going to spend it all, most of it in-house, which we do. So we'll get into that. But before we do, I forgot to make some really big introductions. First, before we get to the family, I'd like to introduce Stephen Asher and Jeannie Jordan, the filmmakers. If you guys could wave your arms. Stephen and Jeannie are Academy Award nominees. They are Emmy winners. They have been nominated for just about every other award that there could be in media. And Jeannie also has lost family members to this disease. So thank you guys so much for doing this film and for being here.
You're welcome.
Glad to be here.
It was an incredible experience.
And there's something you guys probably don't know too. One of my first gigs with ALS TDF was a couple of days after meeting Jamie, back when we were on First Street in Cambridge, I went to the screening at the Museum of Fine Arts. And as I was walking in, a dear old friend came walking in alongside me, and I said, Sheldon Mirowitz, what are you doing here? So Sheldon Mirowitz did the music for the film, everybody. And I had known Sheldon, but I didn't know about the film.
Yeah. Sheldon has done the music for almost all of our films, and he's a brilliant composer and wonderful person.
Awesome. So that was a pretty cool coincidence. I also had the honor of viewing the film a couple of times with Stephen Haywood. And with that, I would like to introduce his parents, Peggy and John Haywood, his brother, Jamie Haywood, his wife, Wendy Haywood, and his son, Alex Haywood. I don't think Ben is on, right, you guys? Ben, are you here?
He just got here.
I
You
did.
did?
Hey. Hi,
And
guys.
Ben, Ben, you should have heard all the things we said about you before you came on.
Wow. I'm sorry.
So one of the things that I kind of wanted to put out there, and Stephen, Jeannie, Alex, Ben, Wendy, John, Peggy, Jamie, if you could comment on it, is what is the theme of this movie? To me, it's about time and the power of love.
I was gonna say
Stephen,
love. It's love. It's a love story. It's a love story between every character. To me,
yeah.
a love story.
Well, and I remember, when it first came out and you guys talked about it being a love letter to Alex. And, Wendy, before a bunch of people hopped on here, you were talking about what it was like for Alex to watch the film now as an adult. And Alex, you can certainly speak for yourself. I'll leave that up to the dynamic of mother and son to determine how either one of you want to address that.
He's his own man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird going back and watching it. The last time I watched it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So I plan on doing it again, in like a month or two. But I don't really have an answer to what I think the theme is, because to me it was just watching somebody that I never really got to interact with as an adult. So time resonated with me more when you said that, because I just got to see somebody that I would never have been able to see otherwise. So
Yeah. And, I think that the title, and I think Stephen is the one who says so much so fast in the film, but, I'd love to hear, and before you guys respond to that, Jamie, Stephen, Jeannie, anybody, Alex, one of the things that always strikes me when I've watched the movie, which is probably, 10 times in the last 17 years, but is that I am watching you learn to walk as your father is losing his ability to. And that always really freaks me out. But it also made me happy that someone was getting to walk. And I know that, that made it all easier for your dad. Stephen, Jeannie, how did you guys choose to title the film as you did?
Well, it came from Stephen, and we were really searching for a title. It's very hard to give films titles. It pins it down in a way that it's about what it's about, and everybody could kind of name it at the end. But Stephen saying we did so much so fast was just like, it's in some ways we've regretted it at times, because people will say too little, too late, too big, too small. I mean, it's a confusing title to people sometimes, but it is a perfect it's a perfect glimpse into the way Stephen handled ALS and wanted to. And, we were just witnesses, really.
And I think that, that's another really important theme about the film, is that the whole family was just living at full speed all the time, despite with ALS, because of ALS, everything, and not stopping, and at every place there was an obstacle, finding a way to get over that and to keep going and keep building houses and being a family. And that's such a amazing message about how to deal with adversity in your life.
Well, and I think it was so much so fast and too little, and in this case, too late, right? You know,
Yeah.
as a bunch of us on here, Ken Thompson, who was Stephen's best friend and has been with the Institute since day one. You know, as we know, Ken and Jamie, Ben, a lot of people on here know this. You know, ALS TDF gave us the foundation, right? This was a small group of people who were looking to change the world, and with an approach that was unblessed by the traditional academic approach to medical research with a nonprofit biotech. And you saw Jamie take the shit and get some of the kudos for doing that. But that different approach still stands, but we've grown up a little bit, wouldn't you say, Ken? How do you think we're different?
I would say that we've grown up quite a bit. Yeah. We've just learned a lot over these past 20 plus years. We've learned how to do our jobs better. And we've learned a lot about the science behind ALS research. Yeah, it's been amazing to watch us grow up, so to speak, from the foundation to the Institute, and things that we have now accomplished and things that we have published, you know, therapies we've moved towards clinical trial. Yeah, it's been an amazing, very long and frustrating journey, but it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, you know, I think, Jamie, speak to this. What didn't you know that mattered most? What do you think, with hindsight, could we have made anything go faster? Would you have changed anything in the beginning? Ben, that's for you too. You're on mute, James.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the earlier question, and I'll just answer your one
Yeah.
here as well. But what I think Steve and Jeannie did, and it was the filmmaking. I mean, we were living the story, but I think that what they did in this unbelievable timeline was to capture sort of the meaning of life and love and a sort of a lifetime shift in this really amazing compressed thing with real people and real experience. And I think that if I had to, if I've taken anything out of this whole experience, and I think this is difficult to look at the sort of the blessing of an experience like ALS, but the blessing of an experience like ALS is to have a acceleration of an understanding of what living really means. And it's an expensive one, but it does really teach you that, and you carry that with you forever, which is just an appreciation for why we're here, what it means, what time it is, all of that. And I think that when I look at the film, I just the craftsmanship with which that was assembled of these moments that we were living over 5 years, in the 90 minutes, it's just magnificent. And
Thank you, Jamie. I was looking at the webpage the other day, and I think one of my favorite comments about the film was somebody on Amazon, I don't know who wrote it, who said, "This film makes you proud to be a human."
Yeah, that made me proud. Exactly.
And I just love that.
And so anyway, so I think the film itself is just it's spectacular, and the way I'm using it now, the work I'm doing now is I'm working on sort of longevity and sort of the fundamental biomarkers of health and what it means to be healthy, because I've come to believe that I don't think we're really going to understand disease until we understand life. Is that one thing that I work on now that is different is I used to ask what is wrong with someone to understand understand disease? Like, why is someone broken? And I've come to believe that actually the right question is what is it that makes us alive? And that's a much and I look at that in molecular biology, but I think of it more of as a spiritual question. Like, there is this why bother life, and the je ne sais quoi of like why be alive? What does it mean to be alive? Joy, passion, love, whatever, is the thing that aligns our bodies, creates all of this magnificence that is the biology, life itself, and then the human condition, and then in understanding that, if we really want to unlock living well, that we have to do that. And so that's been a shift in my experience, and I would say I learned that from Stephen, and I think the film encapsulated it, and you pick it up. But I don't think we're going to understand how to be well unless we understand what it means to live at the sort of deep level of all of ourselves and our biology itself. And it's not about alcohol or coffee or obesity. It's just, what does it mean to be alive, right? That's a different comment, but I think we missed that completely in research today, and that's a big shift that's needed. The mistake I made, and this is TDI has done an immense job of shifting in this direction, and I'm incredibly proud of everyone there. It's like watching this thing that you imagined in a truck in the middle of Oklahoma come to life and be this amazing institution that's still breaking rules and inventing and creating. And I'm so unbelievably proud of everyone. Ken, obviously, and Carol, everyone was stuck with it, but Fernando, who we had the privilege of hiring as a 22-year-old kid and then putting him through Harvard Medical School while they worked for us. So I'm feeling pretty good about growing up a generation that learned how to do research for people themselves as opposed to Harvard or the FDA or anybody else. They know who they work for, and I think I'm really still proud. I'm incredibly proud of that. But I think that the thing that we don't do well is we don't know how we're going to win, and I think that's about understanding the biomarkers or the things that are going to shift things. I think we don't know as much as we think we do, and I think that the basics of understanding why we're different, what makes the disease progress, and how we can measure that change in the same way in the cell screenings that are done and in the animal screenings. And TDI has done that much more, but I wished, rather than testing all of the drugs we did in the beginning, which was what the Institute was amazing at in the first 10 years, I wished we'd put more of the effort into understanding the problem we were solving rather than throwing everything at it. And that would be the only thing. And they've made that shift, and that's more what I work on now.
But Jamie, isn't that easier to say now? But when there's that scene in the film that really strikes me, Steve and Jeannie, when one of you must have been interviewing Jamie, and it was after Robert Bonazzoli had left, and you talked about the difference in why Robert was there and what you were doing, Jamie. So in it, the differential was really that your impetus, your catalyst was to save your brother. And if this can go on, that's wonderful. So now, great, as we develop biomarkers and tools to measure disease, yes. But didn't you want the freaking low-hanging fruit and to try to save your brother?
I mean, I don't know if those of you guys know, like we did a bunch of experimental treatments on Stephen. Obviously, the stem cell transplant was on the film, but there were others too. And they were shots in the dark. And in hindsight, actually, you know what? Actually, I think we knew how weak the odds were, but we had to take the shots. I don't think we weren't naive about the potential. We just took the best shots we had as best we could. Gil, I think in what you're saying, and I talk to Fernando about this sometimes as well. I urge you guys all to keep the pressure on. I believe that science is and medicine are too officious and too process, priesthood, got to make sure you do it all the right way. I like at the beginning in TDI, it's like, you know what? these are our lives, these are our risks. Let's shake some stuff up and do it differently. And I think that we've made the pursuit of life to be some kind of professional thing that's separate from those of us that actually live it. I call bullshit. I think it's time to redistribute the power to change things a little bit to people. That's some of the work I'm doing now too, which is how to develop that. But I think the shift. I mean, I'm being a little technical, and then I don't want to be technical. Biology is undergoing a shift from being a discovery-based discipline to an engineering-based discipline, and that causes massive upheaval in how it is deployed, regulated, studied, understood, brought to market. And it will be good when it gets to the other side of that. And it is as much of the difference as back in the days when the computers were all to universities and everyone's like, oh, we got to go get MIT or Stanford to write a computer program. And can you imagine like wanting to get MIT or Stanford to write a computer program now? It'd be like, my God, no, we don't need an academic. We need someone that actually does work. We need engineers. And so we need to distribute biology out. And I'm excited about that. I think TDI was at the beginning of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's clearly ahead of our time, right? This was founded by all of you engineers, Jamie, Ben, John, who, one of the things that I've always thought about, I forget who said this years ago, but engineers look at a problem, or once a problem is defined for them, their job is to build something to fix it, right? And you all built something in your family's basement that is now the most comprehensive drug development institute for ALS in the world. I mean, that's fucking cool.
I just like to throw in that, I think that watching the movie again, just tonight, I just am so aware of how much it was Stephen's spirit that made that possible, because whatever else we did, he was so positive and just right there. And he just made it possible to, he was the core of the strength for all of us.
Yeah.
Even as he was falling apart physically, his spirit kept us all going.
And he was very good at pulling individuals in the family by asking them to do something to help him.
Yep.
And he moved that around so nobody got left out, everybody got pulled in.
Well,
and it was very effective at creating, and I think the movie's partly about our family learned how to operate as a team, and groups of people can do that, and they can rise above what they ever thought they could do. And I think that's one lesson of the film.
Absolutely.
More in us.
Okay.
Give ourselves credit for.
No, I would agree with that, because a lot of wives came up to me and said, Stephen is so positive and you guys are doing so great. Like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm not doing anything. He's my rock. Like, that sounds crazy because he's the one with ALS, but he's the one that's managing his life, and he's doing it so lovely and uniquely on his own. Like, he was never unwilling to say, I need help. And he was never unwilling to say, my wife is tired. Can someone else do this? And he didn't have that, he just wasn't afraid to do that, and I think that was huge. I think his, and to John's point, I remember when we got interviewed by 60 Minutes too, and I said, a lot of families rally around, a lot of families come together, but they don't always get along. And I feel like that was another core component, is that it was very clear that people genuinely liked each other. It wasn't, it was love, but there was genuine liking in that family. Like, people liked each other and they wanted to be there and hang out. And I think that was a unique feeling too. you don't always get that.
Yeah, case in point, Wendy, can you tell everybody where you all were for the last 10, 12 days?
We were in Tuscany with John and Peg, all of 14 Haywoods descend upon Tuscany. Good luck, Tuscany. We did great. No, it was great. It was wonderful. And it's John and Peggy's 60th year together, and it was magical to be there and be with them, and just the family
So I have to say the thing that I miss. I would say some of the most happiest times of my life were hanging out with Stephen, fixing something. Like it was just so much fun. Or playing Ken, when you would come over and we'd play video games with Stephen, and it's funny, like if I had to think about everything that I've ever done in my life, like papers or whatever, shit that changed shit or whatever it is, it was making the mouse that let Steven keep kicking my ass at video games. It was like the greatest engineering accomplishment in the history of the world, and it was so much freaking fun to do that and hang out with him. And just, I used to just like, sometimes he could tell me, he'd text me something broke, and I'd be like really excited because I'd have to leave work and go over and get have a beer with him and fix it. And it was just nothing more fun than that.
I loved
Well,
that scene.
Jamie, it's pretty much everyone's favorite moment in the film is you in the basement working on the mouse. I mean, it's really
followed by Stephen beating your ass.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it also just speaks to the endless amount of problem solving that ALS is. Just everything in life becomes a challenge, and then you have to find a solution to it and go on to the next one. And you guys were this incredible multi-headed team who were each working on different aspects. Peggy was working on nutrition, and you were working on the mouse, and Wendy was making things happen in the house. And, all of you were taking from a different angle. And, you were just so fortunate also to have this giant team of people to do that.
We like
And the great thing
in our
about
family, guys. We like problems.
Right. Well, and the great thing about Stephen, there were so many great things, and his innate wisdom was something that we just lucked into. You couldn't have known going into this that this person was going to be who he was. But the thing that always amazed me is how he made everybody feel like they were the best at doing things. I remember Ben. At one point, you're like helping Stephen when you're in North Carolina, and it's like just exactly how to rub his face and how to do it, and that how to do it better than anybody else because Stephen has told you that that, and he did that for everybody. He even did it for us, would tell us. I remember at one point we were both trying to interview him. We would be together, and Stephen would watch me, and I would always either start crying or just start getting really nervous. And finally, he basically kind of just said, "Why doesn't Jeannie not come?" which was perfect. I mean, like, it's too hard. It's he and Steve had this ability to be total in their heads about what was happening in a way that I just could not do. Anyway, but I just always remember that scene, Ben, with you washing his face and just feeling like everybody had their role.
I always thought that Stephen and Peggy were so much alike in their ability to hyper focus on a person. There could be a lot of stuff going around, but that ability to look at you and stay in tune with you, even when other people were vying for your attention. I thought that was so similar because Peggy has that gift too.
Oh, well, then that makes me wish like crazy that I even got to know Stephen better before he had lost his ability to speak, because as Peggy knows, and I've probably said to the rest of the Haywood family, to me, Peggy is like a warm bath. I
With
just
candlelight
feel
and wine.
so much
Yes.
better
Don't forget
and
the
feel
wine.
so wonderful with every interaction I have with Peggy.
Mhm.
So pretty cool
Yeah.
like that Stephen was like that. Hey,
You're
I
right.
know there are a lot of people living with ALS who are on this call. I also see Patrick O'Brien, whose film will be featured later in the month on here. Thank you,
Hey,
Patrick, for making
good
the
to see you,
effort to
man.
be on here. Thank you, Michelle, for helping Patrick get on. Sunny, Emily, any questions? You know, I feel like we're having a great conversation here, but I don't want to miss out on any questions that you think we should cover.
Yeah, there's some stuff in the chat. Said that she totally agrees with Wendy. Pat always handled his ALS way better than me. His life spirit was our guiding light. Glennis says my husband's brother felt the same way. They were thrilled to be able to use their hands on resources to help them. And then it was a team. So I think both of those just speak to the power of the individual as well as the power of the collective and using your God-given abilities to make the world a better place.
Well, and I'm sorry, but the power of you people with ALS, like I'm not being just a Pollyanna. Uh-oh.
What?
I just lost my camera here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, and we
We
can
can
see
see
you.
you.
We can see you also.
You can see me?
Can't hear you.
Yes. And
Okay.
hear you.
Great. Okay, well now I can see and hear myself again. But
Good.
there is some research to support this, and I'm broadening it a little bit. But you know, people with ALS are better people than the rest of us. Sorry, everybody else. And I see everyone who has had a relative with ALS nodding their head, and I see the people with ALS who can nod their heads not nodding their heads because they're humble. What else is
Jamie,
in there,
I don't know
Sunny?
if you saw my post, but I think a good follow-up would be a book of Jamieisms. I mean, it might be a little much to do like series, but like even like postcards of Jamieisms. Most of what like note taking and just little zingers that have stuck with me from watching the film that came out of your mouth. So one of them I shared today, and you had said Stephen makes you believe in the redemptive power of technology, which, you know, as a millennial, like what is a life without technology? What is a life without Wi-Fi and fast cars and cell phones? But to take it back to when this film was made and everything that he was able to still enjoy, to find enrichment with, and to go fast. That's my favorite thing in my chair. But even like to see it now with the passing of the Steve Boyson bill, with the eye gauge technology being covered under DME, like watching Stephen talk about losing communication being the hardest part, and then knowing he didn't have that resource that all of us can, you know, is part of our diagnosis almost, is getting all the technology to go with it. It really brings us back to that humility and that humble and knows that forged this disease ahead of it or before us, and knows that we're the ones reaping the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, technology is fascinating, right? Because it can, I mean, right now we're connected around something we're all passionate about through a technology that, it's not that old, less than 5 years. It's kind of a capability, and I think going back to the sort of the life purpose itself, though, I think that technology is also dual-edged, like a lot of compounds and drugs and side effects to it. So I think we have to be really thoughtful about how we use it and use it to enrich ourselves. I mean, Stephen's life was transformed by it. I mean, it was just the ability to live. And a lot of the things that he had that we built are now pretty standard, right? Which is nice, and miraculous.
And so much that we have since, it always strikes me when he talks about the 54 channels or whatever it is on cable, right? Like, well, if you only knew, dude.
Well, it was just a subtle thing, but I mean, Stephen used to DJ almost all events.
Oh, I didn't know that. How do you like that, Patrick O'Brien?
So his chair would set up with decent speakers, and he would just set these soundtracks. He had different songs. He would make lists. He would make an aside. I was talking with Wendy about it a couple of weeks ago about one of his favorite ones. We were trying to figure out where it was, and it would just come out with music there and from him, and it was a wonderful way for him to be, just driving the presence of the room in a neat way, and be present, even though he couldn't always talk in the same speed with everyone else. He could sort of backtone the whole thing. It was really wonderful.
Alex,
it's
do
one
you
of
have
my-
any of the same taste as your father in music?
I
No,
honestly have no idea.
no.
Ben is vehemently shaking his head no, and your Uncle Jamie's saying no. So guess not.
Well,
I'm
I
gonna
have
say
to
yes.
go with my dad, but
I'm
I
gonna
have
say
the Last of
yes.
the Mohicans on, like, Jamie played it in the car one time on the way to North Carolina. He said my dad would listen to it, and it's just some string ensemble for the Last of the Mohicans. And every time I'm driving into my playlist, I'll hear it and I'm like, what the hell is my dad listening to?
No, but I'm gonna say yes because I remember Stephen playing like Stairway to Heaven in different sort of 70s, and Alex plays a lot of like Zeppelin and things like
Right.
that I
Okay.
remember
I'm with you,
Stephen.
Alex.
Well, the other thing is that Stephen would play songs that had lyrics that he wanted to say to Alex that he couldn't say.
Whoa.
Like the Paul Simon song.
Tied to me,
We
yeah.
couldn't use them in the film because we couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
But he would put on. He had us. I'm trying to remember what the lyrics were. Just like.
We'll think of it,
You
Alex,
know,
because it's not fair to say.
Well, as
yeah,
long as it wasn't
it was
50
like how
ways to
proud he
leave
was
your
of you.
lover.
No,
Yeah,
Carol, how
No.
dare
Um,
you?
No.
He did. I do remember him crying at Liz Phair's song, Dig Little Digger.
Yeah.
That was really hard for him. He cried at that song. And I said, please
Traveling
stop
Soldier.
listening to it.
Traveling Soldier by the Dixie Chicks too, another big one for him.
Really?
Well, also Stephen's best line about 60 Minutes, which was, the 60 Minutes crew had come and they were filming and he couldn't figure out what they wanted. And then finally they asked him a question about Peggy and he cried. And he said the minute he finished crying, they turned the lights off and left. That's what they needed.
Yes. The money shot. That was so funny.
Peggy and John, is it hard for you to watch the film? Or does it make you happy?
Well, both. Both.
Yeah.
Just to see, especially to see Alex with his dad, and how proud Stephen would still be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
find that, and Stephen had a great word, it was rememberies. I like the rememberies in watching it again and again. It's sad, of course, that his life ended. But I find the positives come out ahead for me.
I hope that too, beyond who Stephen was as a person, but I hope that you see the work that Ken does and Fernando does and all of us do as his legacy, because it is.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Good.
I mean, Ken's faithfulness from the very beginning is
It's unbelievable.
very special to us.
I don't think people talk about Ken enough.
Oh,
Yes, he
Ken's
doesn't.
dying.
He
Let's
can't
just make
stand it.
I know
let's
Ken can't
embarrass
stand
the
it.
snot out of Ken. This will be awesome.
All right, so I'm going to tell. So for those of
Oh,
the,
no.
so Ken was Stephen's best friend in high school, and the two of them were terrible troublemakers at North. And Ken,
They were very quiet troublemakers. No
they were
one knew
quiet.
about
They never told you. I fought with mom and dad about everything. Steven's like, I'm not going to fight. I'm just going to do whatever I want. And Ben just like, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to do anything wrong. But Ken was sort of the guiding hand for Stephen through high school, and then when Stephen got sick, Ken really came back completely into our lives and joined in the very beginning when we started this up. And one of the first things we did was to test all of these drugs to determine what would work in Stephen, which was always the objective. And Ken formulated literally each of these compounds on the bench, it was so unbelievable to work with people that I don't know, Ken, the team was just so committed and so dedicated at the time. But
We should be clear that there were PhD level scientists standing over my shoulder telling me what to do. I was not the person in charge of drug formulation.
yeah. So the PhD level science, I think you're doing this right because you're done this way. Ken had an awful lot of feedback on how the PhD level scientists can do it better. But I just, and then he's just the center of he is the center of the institute in some ways, and I think that
and don't skip over the part about running out of money every
that's right.
And that there was never a question, Ken. There was never a question of whether Ken was going to bail.
No, that was never a question.
Yeah.
But by the way, I want to go back. I want to compliment Stephen Genie on something a little bit, because one of the most amazing things when you make a movie is at one level, every scene is a little bit out of context, right? So the movie had this financial crisis, and what was magical about it is I think there were like 5 financial crises, right, guys? Like we had one every year. And so what you did is you rolled together all 5 financial crises into this one beautiful moment scene, which was completely accurate. It's just we just did it every year. And they managed to nail it. Like they nailed the emotions and the experience of all of it. And I think that's actually, I think what's truly amazing about Stephen Genie is just fabulous filmmakers. It's beyond, and when you look at it and you live it and you look and you see how they put it together and assembled this sort of completely sort of compressed, truthful narrative out of this massive diversity of life. I don't know how to say it better. I mean, they just caught everybody.
It's truly astonishing that you guys allowed us to do it. Most people, I told Jamie and Stephen and Ben when we first met, I don't know if you remember this, but Steve got mad at me, but when my mother died of ALS, and this sent us on the journey of wanting to do a film about it. But I told them if somebody had come to my family and asked us if we would be in a film, and we would not, absolutely. And I remember saying that, and then Steve saying,
like, this is not the greatest sales pitch ever. when you're talking to some potential subjects.
Jeannie,
I wouldn't do it.
Jeannie, which family member did you reach first? Did you call Stephen? Who did you call? Who did you get your first? Let me talk about it from?
I mean, I think it was Jamie. I think Jamie
well, of
was
course
the
you
first.
Got the yes.
And then Ben and Jamie and we met in Harvard Square.
And Stephen.
No, we deferred the decision to Ben because Ben was in Hollywood.
That was me and Stephen at Green Street Cafe.
At Green Street, yes. Yeah. Okay. And I remember that.
I think
Ben
that
got
the
to
boys
decide.
weren't necessarily, they were hesitant. And Peggy said, you guys need to watch Troublesome Creek.
Yes,
And then they
that's
watched,
what happened.
that's,
Right.
Peggy was like, I don't think you understand who these people are. Like Peggy got it because she
That
had
Peggy,
seen Troublesome Creek. And she knew that you guys weren't just, you know, another group out going, oh, let's do a reality
Yeah.
show that's,
Right.
you know.
I was thinking because I knew that Jeannie was an Iowa farm girl and I'm a South Dakota farm
Yeah.
girl. And her movie that when I saw Troublesome Creek, I sobbed at that one because about your family's experience. It wasn't about it was about the farm, not about ALS. So I knew you guys were pretty good.
So I have a question for Steve and Jeannie, because I think when you embarked upon this, I don't know that you felt it was going to be as big or as long as it ended up being. I had the sense
we
that-
knew it was going to be a long time. We
Yeah.
didn't know how long. But it's also it's a kind of filmmaking that is almost impossible to do these days. And we were talking about Alex taking his first steps, and for me that's a really emblematic scene because I came over with the camera in the morning. Nothing was going on. I spent all morning and most of the afternoon just, waiting for something to happen. Nothing was happening. And I was getting ready to leave and I was thinking like, this is an insane way to make a film. I've just spent a whole day here.
Yeah.
Nothing has happened. There has been nothing to film.
We're getting in everybody's way.
And then Stephen decided to roll outside with Alex, and then this thing happened, and it was like the only way it could be captured was because I'd been there all day, and and then it made sense. But it's
how many hours of film was it again, guys?
Oh God!
I
don't think we had the heart.
I think you told me it was like 500 hours or something.
Well,
like
it
that.
was something like that because it was video. It was the first time we'd shot shot video rather than film, so you could just shoot and shoot and shoot, which was.
But it's more like it's the years more than the hours of footage. But
right.
Anyway.
Well, I would love to hear from people like how it strikes people now, because it's been a long time since we made the film. So I would love to hear from those of you who watched. Just does it feel contemporary? Does it feel like a long time ago?
And how does it compare to your experience?
Yeah. If anybody wants to address that.
I can start. I started at ALS TDI about 5 years ago. And this year I just turned 29. So I was reflecting a lot about Stephen and this whole experience of how ALS TDI started, right? Turning 29 and being like, wow, that's how old he was when he was diagnosed. Like, how would I respond? How would my family respond? And that was really powerful. This is something we try and get a lot of the new hires to watch, so they sort of get the family atmosphere of ALS TDI, which I know a lot of people, it's a triggering word when you say your workplace is like a family, but you can see here, like we see the Haywoods at all of our major events. I bother Ken regularly. Ken's literally 3 streets down from me right now, and I would bother him now, but I'm sick, so I have COVID, so I can't go bother Ken right now. And it's one of those things that you watch the film and you're like, oh, this is going to be different. I think Carol had the same experience when she was like, oh, I need to go work there. Because when I started and I watched that film, I was like, this is going to be different. This is not going to be a job. And 5 years later, we're here. And I thought this movie was really appropriate to kick off ALS Awareness Month, which ALS TDI partnered with Her ALS Story and the Young Faces of ALS to come up with quotes throughout the month that we'll be sharing, and they're all really powerful, and it's just really cool to see all of these young people making a huge impact in the lives of so many people. So for me, that's this movie. It does feel like, obviously the film looks older, but not too crazy old, because it's all about, it's what all my family movies look like. But it's one of those things that it's cool to see people my age changing the world, and then you see them be old like Ken now. And you're like, oh, he did that. They did that.
Thank you for being on, Ken, because otherwise I would have gotten that.
Listen,
Yeah.
if we're not, Ken hates attention, so if anybody else has good Ken stories, we'll take them.
I will log off.
Ken, do you have a story though? Do you have a story, or how does it strike? How does the film strike you now, years later?
Yeah, I love watching the film. I would never get tired of watching the film. Whenever the most recent story that popped in my head as Steve and Jeannie were talking about the many hours and days they spent at the Haywood household. Whenever I would show up there, they would be there, but it wasn't like you were in the way. You were just part of what was happening. And I think that's why you are so good at your craft, is that you became part of the family. Even though you were holding a camera and a mic, you were there and involved. And it was always great having you there. And I think it meant a lot to Stephen to have you guys there too, creating this record.
Oh, and Desi, great question. Desi, who I got to meet the same weekend that Sunny and I finally met in person. Desi asked, did Stephen get to see the finished film?
Or the cottage.
The cottage.
house.
Yeah,
The
the
house.
house.
Carriage house,
Oh,
yeah.
so it is.
House.
Oh,
Yeah,
the carriage house you're
Yes, he
asking.
did.
So not only did
Yes.
Stephen see the carriage house, but he got to spend a lot of time there. But after the film was over, we did another we implanted an electrode in his brain, like the ones that Neuralink is doing now for brain implants. And so we were trying to, in case the communication system stopped, we had this electrode implanted in him that we were trying to do. And the carriage house was like the Matrix, and it had all these big computer screens, and he would back up in his wheelchair and we'd plug him in. And there's this great video of Alex, I think I sent it to you, Alex, but Alex saying, so Stephen's controlling a cursor with his brain, and Alex like, make the cursor go up, down, left, right, and Stephen's doing this. So that was later. So he got to see it and use it and enjoy it. So and it came out magnificent.
Also the house is on the carriage house is on the historic registry.
Yeah, it won an award for Stephen's work for doing that.
Cool.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
It's
We held
really
the
beautiful.
Premiere party actually there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
It
Yeah.
premiered at Newton, West Newton
Yeah.
Cinema, and we had the party there. So it was nice. Stephen could sit up in the carriage house and hold court. It was lovely.
Right.
Yeah, that was really cool. Sonny, do we have to get off, or do we keep going? No?
I mean, it's up to you guys. This is a great conversation, and
Yeah, I didn't know if I forget what time you put this in, if anybody has to get off.
I think
I
it's
guess
in
I
the
certainly
soft hour.
Okay.
So I have a point that struck me in the film, because I've spent my life in drug development, mostly not in ALS, just the last 6 years. But it was when you went to the neuroscience convention and, you were just being disruptors. And that's what it takes to change ALS. All of the status quo, it makes me crazy. I work for a company that's trying to be disruptors, and we're definitely not, we don't have a seat at the cool kids table, but I think that's good, because the cool kids table isn't getting anywhere. Sorry, I hope there's another, but that's that's the thing that really struck me, is like, okay, show up even if they don't want you there, because somebody's got to start thinking about ALS differently, for God's sakes. And I know TDI does that, and that's why I was so drawn to Carol and to you. But that to me was like, because I also worked as just a short story, as I worked at Bristol Myers Squibb, and we developed Yervoy in immunotherapy, and everyone thought we were crazy. It took 100 years for the first immunotherapy to come forward, and now there's standards of care. But I remember being at Bristol Myers, and we bought this little company for immunotherapy, and they said, you guys are nuts. Immunotherapy is not going to be anywhere. Now everybody who gets cancer gets immunotherapy, and I feel like we're getting to that point in ALS, but it's the disruptor. So thank you for going to the neuroscience convention, and those people there were jerks to you.
Thank you. One of my favorite quotes is, I don't know who said it. It is necessary, but not sufficient, for the senior people in a field to reject an idea for it to have any value.
Yeah. 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 But there's also, I forget now who said it, but I wrote it down because it's still, our mantra, I think, today in the ALS community. Someone in the movie says the medical system just does not understand how little time ALS patients have. Maybe it was you to Jeff, Jamie, I can't remember, but it's exactly how we all still talk, right? As we encounter the FDA and it looks at, various drugs too that are up in front of it right now. That certainly is not outdated, unfortunately, I would say. But the hats at your wedding were outdated. Jamie.
That was
Go ahead, Sunny.
one of the quotes kind of to that a takeaway I had was another Jamieism. But he said it's a systematic approach to the denial of reality. And I think that's why we're here. That is to be those disruptors, to bring a different face and a different light and a different motivation to not just curing this disease, but finding a way to live with this disease.
So,
yeah.
Sunny, what struck you about the way Stephen lived? What is similar to the way you choose to live, and what's different?
I mean, it took me a while to come around on like the technology side, because I saw it as relenting or giving up my autonomy. But man, once I got that chair and I can drink and drive, watch out. Either you move or I'll move you. And now it's like all the kind of accommodations, I can't wait for more. And so Stan, especially the way his brain works and being able to see, just take a piece of run-of-the-mill technology and then making it into something specific for his needs, I think just speaks volumes to, as her ALS story. Something we have is the ALS hacks page, and it's just stuff you can buy on Amazon that makes your life just a little bit easier. And I think Stephen really embodied that, like, why waste my time fighting to do it myself when I can make it easier? And I think that's a good way to describe this community as well.
Well, I think that, that's something when people, ask us about, like, what did we learn, or what is there to learn? Stephen's proactive feeling about technology, I think he was actually ahead of the family in the sense, like, he wanted his power chair and he wanted to sign up for it and get it, where some people might have seen it like he was giving up trying to walk or something. And he just was like, I'm going to need this in 6 months. I want to get signed up for it. I want to be, moving ahead, and didn't, instead of seeing those as losses, just saw them as it's another shift. I'm gonna, and I'm gonna master it and move forward with that.
And he was that way about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a pragmatism, or was it maybe even a way to protect the rest of you, Wendy, Peggy, John, Ben, Jamie, to say, I'm gonna get ahead of this so that they don't have to worry about me? Or was he just always a pragmatic guy? Yeah.
Well, he also, it's just cool gadgets too. I mean, I'm not even sure it's just pragmatic. I think it was just having cool toys.
Yeah.
I mean, the scene where he's just taking the wheelchair, there's like multiple, like that just montage of Stephen spinning. Like, he was in heaven. He was like, oh my God, I'm just gonna spin this sucker every chance I get. And he did. He got true joy out of, he would go out for afternoons. He would just leave and be out in his wheelchair for like an hour, 2 hours. And at some point I think, is he still alive? Like, is he coming home? Like, you know, and he
Steve was usually with him.
well, but
Right.
sometimes he just went out and he toured
Yeah.
the neighborhood. His big dream was he wanted to get a riding lawnmower because he said, I could just go mow everyone's lawns and I could just ride around on it. Like for him, it was so exciting just to do these things, you know, like.
I remember when Steven, we got the Permobil rep out, and I think we pinched one of those coders that let us reprogram the chair. And when we figured out how to take the top speed up another 25%, because like there was a limiter on it, and he was so excited.
Oh, Sonny, you're going to have to find out how to do that.
Well, I think his brothers forget that Stephen, in his younger years, we'd be going on a trip and we'd stop the car. Stephen will be outside and walking fast towards the horizon and disappear without telling us anything about his
Oh,
plans.
great.
And we just
Didn't he do that to you at the Statue of Liberty?
Yes,
yes.
in the Scottish Highlands.
Oh my God.
Many places, but he found his way back.
Well, or we found him, one or the other.
I do want to touch on one thing about the film that I think we're very blessed, and I think that you know, my dad and mom opened up their pocketbooks to get the institute started, to get and my dad, took on a ton of extra work. There was the whole way this worked involved a sort of just a removal of limitations that my dad shouldered immensely, and I think we were very, 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 very blessed, and I look at it, I just think about how much people, you guys were in the middle of planning your this great vacation retirement thing. They started this whole thing in Italy that they got going in their lives. They were really get to the point where they're going to enjoy it, and I think it was really amazing how everyone came together, and mom and dad did that, and I think Wendy, you really made the home the nexus of everything. It was really nice. I used to love just being able to pull up and just hang out and go to a movie or whatever. There's always a good beer in the fridge, and it was just very. I don't know. We were just so blessed, and I think that it sometimes looked a little bit easier than it maybe should have been, because we were so lucky in so many ways. And I think that's one of the things that I sometimes feel I want to touch on, because there was a lot to make that all miracle happen. Thank you, Dad.
I think what they captured was that, along with what Jamie's saying, that's so important, is listen, there were some really hard times. I mean, there was crying, there was painful moments. I mean, there were really tough times. But what I think Steve and Jeannie captured more than anything is what Jamie is saying, that those times exist. They can't not. Everyone was in a lot of pain. They were feeling loss, but the ability to have, very, bad humor, to laugh, to love, like all of that, I think is what they were so capable of catching, was that it was hard. There's no denying that, but without everybody lifting each other up, it just wouldn't have been possible to get through it. And I feel like that was the power. When I said it was about love, I feel like that was the power of the movie, was you could see genuine love between siblings and parents and children and spouses and friends. Like, it was just, we're here, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it with the best foot forward we can do. So you didn't always see the times that people were crashing and falling apart. I mean, thank God you weren't there for my, what was it, my 40th birthday or something? I don't remember. No, it couldn't have been. I was younger than that. John and Peggy came over for my birthday, and I'd been up with Stephen all night, sorry, Alex, I know you're there with your girlfriend if you want to mute me out, but Stephen had diarrhea, he'd been sick, he'd been vomiting, and I'd been taking care of him all night long. John and Peggy were coming over just so I could go to a movie. I was like, I just want to go get out of the house. It's my birthday. And Alex is at the bottom of the stairs yelling, Mom, you gotta wipe my butt. And I'm like, I hate everyone. And John and Peggy showed up and I got to leave. Those things aren't always on there, but those things were there. They were happening. Alex pulled out Stephen's feeding tube while I was cleaning up a Christmas ornament that he broke. We had to rush him to the hospital. Do you guys remember that? And put a whole new feeding tube in. So
I remember that.
It's just,
We decided not to.
I don't know how you record
that.
that adverse event, like the 2-year-old and it's like,
Yeah. He just got home from the hospital. He broke an ornament. I was cleaning it up and I walk in the room and he's holding Stephen's feeding tube.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
So fast.
What's that?
that was Patrick. Can you play it again?
Your film was a major influence on us, on me. Thank you for so much, so fast.
Oh,
Well, thank you for saying that.
thank you very, very much for saying that. That means the world to us. It really does.
Yes, because Patrick's film, which will be
Yes, which we want
Yes.
yeah, you
Which
guys
we're
got
gonna be watching.
We know about Patrick's film. We
Everybody
unfortunately have
knows
not
about
seen
Patrick's
it. Yeah,
film. Yes.
right.
So we'll see it. We can't wait.
All right,
it's
so
part of the film fest,
Yes.
this film fest, and it's amazing. I got to be there with Patrick as he won the audience award at Tribeca. It was really
I'm
wonderful.
gonna head to put the kids to bed in a minute here, but Sunny, given your interest in sort of tips and components here, and the theme, and you're mentioning, one of the things I really liked learning was that vodka was great at cleaning feeding tubes, and we used it almost every night.
Handy thing to know.
Just
Dual
pour the
purpose.
martini- Just pour the martini down the feeding tube.
Perfect.
Desi taught me about the power of tequila through your feeding tube.
Oh, I just that wasn't our drink. We have to try that out.
No, I would have
Sunny.
never imagined.
Honey, Stephen said it was great when he burped. He could taste it.
That's right.
Um,
The other one. This was this wonderful ALS. My mom never swore a day in her life until Stephen got sick, and then she said, "Fuck this."
Yeah. Yeah. I would think
Much
so.
better now. I don't, much less bad.
Sunny, I see that people are starting to have to drop off. Do you have
Yeah.
anything else you'd like us to try to cover?
I don't think so. I'd like to keep this conversation going on social media. Get the link posted. Hope you guys will be here to join us next Monday. We're going to be discussing Vice, Die Trying with Angelina Fanos. And there's a huge thank you to everybody that made this happen, and Carol for leading the discussion, and just my life is better because of each of you. So thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you for inviting us, and
Yes.
it's really an honor to be part of it.
It is.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank
we'll
you
see
for
all
being here, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen and Jeannie, Haywoods, Patrick, everybody. Ken.
Ken,
he's back.
it's all about
Yeah.
Ken.
Ken. Shine the light on Ken.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.